Hello, and welcome to Crafted Bricks. What you're looking at is the large 1:8 scale military Humvee H1 functional model from CaDa. And it's my intention with this video to cover this model in depth, right from unboxing, talking you through the key build stages, showcasing you the model's functions, sharing my review thoughts on the model, and finally taking it outdoors to really test and see what this beast of a model can do. And it's my hope that this video will give you all the information that you need to make an informed decision on whether this model is something that you would like to buy and build for yourself. And on that note, if you do want to buy this model after watching this video, I put a special link in the description of the video that will give you 5% off the price on checkout. Or alternatively, if you use the coupon code I've also put in the description of the video, you can get 5% off any order that you place on CaDa's official web store. Let's dive straight into the unboxing section of the video. The box of model parts comes in is huge and it's very heavy, weighing in at close to 5 kilograms, which I'm not surprised at given this model has 3,935 parts. On the front of the box is a nice picture of the finished Humvee, and on the back there are some smaller photos showing the functions that the model has, and there is an image on the bottom left showing the components required to motorize the model. It's very important to note these components, however, are not included in the set, and you will need to order these separately from CaDa's web store when buying this model, and I'll talk more about this later in the video. Inside the box, there are 5 internal boxes that are numbered, containing all the packets of parts required to build the model. Included also are the printed instruction booklets. There are 5 of these, and finally we have a small sticker sheet included as well. Next, I'm going to walk you through the build of this model, breaking it down parts box by parts box, showing you the end result of key stages of the build, and doing any feature demos or talking about the model as I progressively work through the build. The build starts with parts from box 00, which contains the wheels, hubs, and several bags of different types of connector pins, and also the parts from box number 1 will be required. The first 3 stages of the build, following instruction manuals 1 and 2, cover building the 2 main axle assemblies, suspension, engine, and drivetrain. As a side note, I just wanted to mention here that as I started the build, what I immediately noticed is just how different and much more challenging CaDa's building instructions are versus standard LEGO Technic instructions. CaDa's instructions pack a lot more build steps into every page, and although accurate and clear, they can be complex to follow. I personally found this to be a refreshing challenge that really kept me on my toes. So if you are seeking a more challenging build to take on, this is a model you should definitely consider. Now, when I was getting into building stage 3, which requires you to connect the front and rear axle assemblies via a connecting drive shaft, I noticed something that worried me a little bit. I felt like the 12L ABS plastic drive axle seemed like it may be inadequate to take the torsional load that may be applied to it, especially given this model has an all-wheel drive system, is motorized, and I'm going to be attempting to use it outdoors in difficult terrain. I recalled that the telehandler model that I built last year, also by CaDa, included several strong carbon fiber axles, and on looking at that model, I was in luck. There is a 12L length carbon fiber axle used on the top lift arm of that model. So I removed it from the telehandler, and as you can see here, if I bend the standard ABS plastic axle, it flexes a lot. Whereas the carbon fiber axle is rock solid, and I think when used as the Humvee central drive axle, will help ensure that the 2 large size motors that will be used to drive the model can more evenly apply drive force to both the front and rear differentials. I also fitted off some LEGO half bush elements to some of the short axles in the drivetrain to help stiffen them up. I suspect this is all overkill and isn't something you will need to worry about if you build this model too. But I thought given I want to film the completed model in an outdoor setting, it was good to make this change now, this early stage of the build, as it would be almost impossible to do this drive axle swap out retrospectively after fully completing the model. And here we go. This is the main model chassis fully built, and I think this is a good opportunity to talk about and show you some of the cool technical features of this model. I've mentioned already there are 2 differentials used in the model with a connecting drivetrain, giving this model an always-on all-wheel drive setup. The steering rack for the model is on the underside and seems to work quite well. The model has a Mach 8-cylinder working engine that interestingly is driven via a chain mechanism of the center drive shaft. And now for what I think is one of the coolest features of this model, which is lockable differentials for both the front and rear diffs. To demonstrate this, the differential locks are currently off, So if I manually rotate the drive axle, you can see that the wheels all rotate, but at different speeds, which is as expected. If I then switch the differential locks on and again manually rotate the drive axle, you can see that the drive force is being applied evenly to all four wheels, with them all rotating by the same amount and at the same speed. This should, when the model is motorized, help it to traverse and overcome difficult terrain. I look forward to testing this later on. The suspension setup on this model is somewhat extreme. It's very firm to say the least. The shock absorber springs, as you can see, are certainly heavy duty, and comparing these to a regular sized shock absorber from Lego gives you a visual comparison on just how large the shock absorbers included with this CaDa's set are. Rounding out build stage 3 and completing the parts included in box number 1 is the build of the roof-mounted minigun and what I believe to be a representation of a BGM-71 TOW anti-tank missile launcher. And one final thing, it's so good to see 1L axle with pin connectors in black color. These are no longer produced by Lego in black. We typically see these parts in our Technic builds in bright blue, as I've shown here by way of comparison. And we all know these bright blue pins can be a real eyesore in some builds. I may even try to contact CaDa to ask to order these pins in bulk to use for future Technic model projects. They may say no, but I think it's worth a try. Next, we have parts from box number 2, which will take us through build stages 4, 5, and 6. Stage 4 involved building this very cleverly designed play function switching and control assembly that you can now see mounted in the center of the chassis. So let's take a look at how the functions are operated. There is an angle-coupled set of axles that, on rotation, drives the functions, and there is a second connected set of axles that connect to a toggle-type switch on the rear of the model. If I rotate the toggle so it's facing towards me and activate the function, you can see the turntable on the top assembly is rotating, and this is going to be responsible for panning the mountable weapons on the roof of the model. Toggling the switch clockwise one position will then allow the winch at the front of the model to be operated. Toggling the switch clockwise once more will drive the roof center axle, which activates the function of each of the roof mountable weapons. And finally, toggling the switch once more allows the differential locks to be shifted to be off or on. Build stages 5 and 6 involve building the hood of the model, then one sidewall of the cab, and finally the rear hatch, and some other supporting bodywork components. Moving on, boxes 3 and 4 contain the parts for build stages 7 and 8, which cover completing the bodywork and interior of the model. The main cab is very well constructed and looks great, and I like it how the rear hatch and doors all have spring assemblies so that they flip open readily, but they also stay shut when in their closed positions. They do not flap open or move around when the model is in motion. The cab then slots onto the chassis very readily and is secured with pins underneath the model. The front hood can then be fitted off. Again, this fits in nicely and is secured by a series of connector pins. And finally, there is a removable panel that can be slotted into the roof to cover the void where the roof-mounted weapons are fitted to if you want to have or display this model without a mounted weapon. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that the motorization components for this model have to be ordered separately as they are not included in the main box set. If you do want to motorize the model, please ensure that you add the Motorized Power System Elements bundle, as I'm showing on screen here, to your cart when you buy the model. If you do this, you'll get a series of motors, connectors, a controller that takes 2 AA batteries, some LED lights, and a USB chargeable battery. Instruction booklet number 5 covers the steps required to motorize the model. I do recommend that you fit off the motors, wiring, and battery to the model chassis before fitting off the bodywork of the model, or that you remove the bodywork, as this will make fitting the motors, wiring, and so on much easier. And after doing just that, I'm very impressed with how well everything works. You can see that there are 2 motors to drive the selection and execution of the play functions, with the battery box housed conveniently at the rear of the model for easy access. Looking at the underside now, there are 2 large-sized motors responsible for driving the vehicle, with 1 servo-type motor responsible for steering. All of the connecting cables can be neatly housed in the center of the model and are covered up with a plate. Let me demo the functions once more, this time using the controller and motors. The model can be powered to move forward and in reverse, and of course steer right and left. Note also that the LED lights for the front headlights are activated when the model is driving. The play functions are very responsive when motorized. The weapon turntable rotates readily, as you can see. Toggling the functions is also very easy by the remote, and here we can see the differential locks being switched off and on. then the central axle rotating for the mounted weapon function, and finally we can see the winch function being selected and then operated. Before I cut over to show you the model with me on camera, it's going to be easiest for me to show you a few things staying in this overhead view. First off, I'll remove the panel from the roof and fit the minigun to the model. It just slots in easily, as you can see, and via the remote I can then pan the weapon left and right. Toggling the function selector 2 selections forward then allows me to rotate the barrels of the minigun. I think this is pretty cool to watch. Rotating the minigun over to 90 degrees and removing it. Note when I do this, sometimes there's a component that seems to get stuck, but then allows me to then slot in the missile launcher. And again, by the remote, I can pan the launcher around as needed, but this time toggling the function selector 2 rotations forward will trigger firing of the spring-loaded missile. To access the rear battery box, to switch it on or off, or to charge it, all you need to do is to flip up the rear hatch, and as you can see, there's plenty of room to access the battery. To open up the front hood, you'll need to remove 2 small cogs from the bull bar and then rotate it forward. Then unclip the 2 toggles on either side of the model to release the hood, which when done will allow you to rotate the hood up and forward to reveal the engine bay. Well, with the build now complete and having demonstrated some of the functions of this model to you already, it's really important that I show you what the model looks like with me on camera. And as you can see, this is an incredibly large and impressive model. I'm extremely happy with it. The overwhelming thought that I have now that I've built this model and have played with it is that it's incredibly well designed. Whoever designed this, or the team of designers, have really put a lot of care and thought and work into designing this model. For example, the bodywork on the model is incredibly well detailed and fully fleshed out. I don't see any large gaps or gaping holes that we actually sometimes see in some of the larger scale Technic models from Lego. And I think that the play functions this model has, the very clever motorization of the model, the all-wheel drive system, and the lockable differentials have all been executed superbly and I think are amazing features of this particular set. Now, it is important that I provide a balanced view. There are a few drawbacks to this model that I want to talk about right now. And the main one is, unfortunately, the quality of CaDa's parts is nowhere near as good as the quality of Lego parts. And for this particular model, what I mean is that most of the larger parts, like the bodywork panel sections that you can see, but also some of the larger lift arms or any of the tiles or sloped elements, will all exhibit scratches and scuff marks, which is really unfortunate. Even looking at the model now, I can see a few marks on the roof and the back here, which is just a real shame. This could actually be a 10 out of 10 set. It's that good. It's just let down slightly by some of the marking of the panels. In terms of the molding of all the parts, they're all molded perfectly. Everything fits together very well, so that's not a worry. The other thing that kind of let the model down a little bit is the stickers are a little bit average, not as good as the quality of Lego stickers, but there are only 4 of them for this model, so it's not really a problem. And there are also some brightly colored orange and red elements in the central cab here and also in the front wheel wells that occasionally just kind of draw the eye when you're viewing the model. And that's a little bit unfortunate because those parts could have quite easily been done in black or a dark stone grey color, for example. And the final thing that I'm a little bit worried about, not sure yet, is that although the model works very well when tested indoors, I was driving it around the house earlier, given its very heavy weight, so it actually weighs 3.8 kilos, I'm really not sure how this model is going to go in an outdoor setting when faced with some more challenging and difficult terrain, but I'm actually going to test that in the next section of the video. Now, in summary, if you're someone who loves to have really highly polished, pristine, finished models to add to your collection, or maybe you're someone who does not enjoy building large, complex, lengthy type of builds, maybe you find that to be a bit of a chore, then if you're in either of those camps, I would not recommend this model to you. If, however, you love building highly functional Technic-style models and you value functionality more so than cosmetic perfection, this is a great model that I would recommend to you. And furthermore, if you do enjoy building those complex builds that are going to really challenge you and take a number of build sessions to complete, this model definitely fits that bill and is one you should consider. And finally, if you just love building cool, large-scale vehicles that have cool functions, are radio controlled, and that you can play with after you build, then this CaDa Humvee set should most definitely be on your build list. On that note, if you do want to buy this set after watching the video, as I mentioned right at the beginning of the video, I have put a link to where you can purchase it in the description of my video here. And if you use that link, you will get 5% off at checkout from the price of the model. I think it's time for me to stop talking. I'm really keen to test this model outdoors, so let's jump to that right now.